Do you dare to enter the Fart Fortress? And then we take a look at the story of a young couple who's spiraling deeper and deeper into an addiction. Is it possible that a woman's cocaine use is causing her entire life to fall apart? Or is there even something darker in control? Today on Dead Rabbit Radio.
Actually, I'm a lot freaked out.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Dead Rabbit Radio. I'm your host, Ace Carpenter. I'm having a great day. I hope you guys are having a great day too, and I'm welcoming myself back. I recently took a week off the podcast to take care of some health issues. I was just burning the candle at both ends. People still who uses candles nowadays? I was running the light bulb upside down. I was really just running out of energy, dealing with a health scare, blah, 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 all that stuff. So I had to take a week off, but I'm so glad that you guys are still here to enjoy some Dead Rabbit Radio. I really do appreciate it. You're like, Jason, yeah, it's nice that the show's back on, but did you have to start the first episode of your return with the Fart Fortress? What is that even possibly about? Well, before we get into the Fortress of Farts, everyone get on your feet and give it up for one of our legacy Patreon supporters, Banked Sassy Pants. Woohoo! Yeah, we're reluctantly walking into Dead Rabbit Radio Command. They don't want to enter the Fart Fortress any more than any of you do, I'm sure. Banked, you're going to be our captain, our pilot this episode. If you guys can't support the show financially through the merch store or through the Patreon, I totally understand. I really do. Just help spread the word about Dead Rabbit Radio. That helps out so much. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everyone you know. Dead Rabbit Radio is your favorite paranormal. I don't know if farts are paranormal. We'll get into it, but your favorite paranormal show, because that can help the show grow. Banked, let's go ahead and get this. Let's go ahead and get this adventure started. I'm going to toss you the keys to the Jason Jalopy. Everyone hop on board our gas-powered vehicle as Banked Sassy Pants drives us out of Dead Rabbit Radio Command all the way out to middle school. We're headed all the way out to this middle school, and we're just kind of parked across the street, and we're watching, like, kids play basketball. You're like, Jason, I already feel super uncomfortable about this. No, it has really nothing to do with kids, but that's where this story starts. You're like, Jason, I know you took a week off. Please don't make us park outside of a middle school and watch kids play basketball. Well, hold on. So, let me give you a little bit of context, and then maybe you'll feel more comfortable, because there's nothing creepy going on, at least as far as we're concerned. Let me give you some more context. Recently, there was an article published in the Archives of Sexual Behavior. Context, again, you're jumping out of the car, you're like, no, I'm going to Dairy Queen. I'll just skip to the cocaine addiction story. That sounds like it'll be far more lively and less creepy. No. Come back. Hold on. There's an article written in the Archives of Sexual Behavior by Mark D. Griffiths, PhD. And in this article that he wrote, he talks about someone named Brad. That's a fake name that he gave the guy because it's like a medical article. You know, HIPAA laws protect privacy. You definitely would want to be... You wouldn't want your name associated with this story. Brad was interviewed by Dr. Griffiths. PhD means doctor, right? He was interviewed by Dr. Griffiths. Brad tells this story. In Illinois, he was growing up. And back when he was in middle school, he was a normal boy. He was not made of wood. He did not have a magical grasshopper or cricket or whatever that was. He was a normal boy with normal interests. He hung out with his friends. He did stuff that no one would think was weird. But he also had this huge crush on this girl who we will call Becky. It was like his middle school crush. And this story is fairly recent. Like this story starts in like the mid 2000s, right? 2010, somewhere around there, 2012. He's in middle school. He has a huge crush on this girl named Becky, and he's like, she's absolutely gorgeous, but not just that, she was really athletic. She ran 10 miles a day, she was fit, and she was athletic, and Brad had a thing for her. Brad had a thing for her. Said she was really nice, too. She's shy. She's like everything he wanted in a girl. Where one day, Brad was hanging out with his middle school buddies, and they're just kind of talking, hey, Brad, what are you doing? What are you up to after school? He's like, normal things. Totally normal things. And they're like, okay. So are we. Hey, Brad, did you hear about that? You know that girl you're always talking about? That girl, Becky? Did you hear what happened during science class? And Brad's like, no, what happened? And the kids are like, oh, it was so hilarious, dude. You should have been there. Becky farted in the middle of class. Like, everybody heard it. Everybody heard it. There was no way that she could deny it. We all knew that she farted. And Brad is sitting there and he goes, farted, And he told Dr. Griffiths, he goes, listen, I knew that girl's farted, but I couldn't believe that she farted. As perfect as she was, that she let loose a rip-roaring gas blast. And what that did was that triggered, in his developing brain, a fart fetish. From that day on, he became obsessed with farts, with people passing gas. Now, in my household, we weren't allowed to use the word fart. Growing up, we weren't allowed to use the word fart. My dad said it was too crude. So we called them Popeyes. I don't know why that particular character. We didn't call it like a Red Flintstone. We didn't call it an Astro. We called them Popeyes. Because we weren't allowed to say the word fart. But we did fart a lot as a family. We did fart quite often. And, they're funny. Farts just are instinctively funny. What they aren't instinctively is sexual or attractive in any way, shape, or form for the vast majority of humanity. I don't feel like this is a shock to you. You're like, what? I thought everyone was attracted to them as you're sitting in your fart box 3000. Most people just think they're funny. Some people think they're gross. But there's a minuscule amount of people that are sexually attracted to farts and farters. And I've talked a lot on this show how fetishes work. It's super weird. Most people don't have a fetish. What happens is something like what happened to Brad, where when he's still developing, his brain's developing, he's going through puberty, all of these things, they encounter a certain type of stimuli, like stinky feet or regular feet. Foot fetishes, I don't understand either, but those are pretty popular. Maybe their sister walks on their face when they're 12. Maybe they're sitting at a restaurant and there's a beautiful, busty waitress and she's carrying a plate of hot spaghetti, so you develop a spaghetti fetish. I actually don't know if that exists. I'm sure it does. I'm sure someone has a fetish for it. But you know what I mean? Like your brain, the signals get crossed. He knew this girl was attracted. He was attracted to her. And then when he finds out that she farted, all of a sudden he develops a fart fetish, which I always like. I get it. People have feet fetish. It seems weird. It's a little weird to me. But then there are fetishes that are kind of crippling, I feel. Like say you had a fetish for farts. That's really going to impact your dating life. I would think. So we're going to take a look at the journey of Brad, and he's pretty open about this. He doesn't want his real name used. He doesn't want where he works. It's not on his LinkedIn account. But he spoke pretty openly about the specific name of this is eproctophile, or lover of farts. And this is going to blow your mind. All of that stuff, you're like, oh, that was the whole story? It's a girl who farted? No, we're just getting started. That was just the beginning of it. Brad says, listen, I'm going to be very clear, he's saying this, even though I'm using first person, I'm not saying this. Brad says, I only have sex with women, but as far as farts go, I'm bisexual. He can enjoy farts from both men or women, doesn't matter. Which I would argue, you can't be that picky if you're into something so weird. If you are out on a date, like, when do you bring that up? Is it the first date topic? She's like, well, I really like you. Why do we keep going to Del Taco? It's just a great place, and the economy's so rough, you save a lot of money. Do you bring it up on the third date? Do you bring it up never? Do you never announce this to anybody? He's bisexual when it comes to farting. He doesn't care if it's a man or a woman. He just wants to be, and here's the thing. His specialty, his reason for existence, what he loves the most, is being farted on. So now it's even more specific. Someone walks by him and lets out one, and he's like, boring. Lame! And the person's like, what? They're just walking through Macy's. They thought no one could tell. They were the ones who farted, and you hear a guy go, boo! Boo, fart on my face next time. Like, what? What is going on? Welcome back to the podcast, by the way. He wants to be farted on. He says this really started when he was in middle school, but when he was a teenager, he was hanging out with a friend, we'll call him Tony. And one day he's hanging out with Tony, and Tony's just like, they're, chatting about, beans. They're talking about pinto beans versus black beans. What's better, Del Taco or Taco Bell? When all of a sudden, Tony... I'm surprised I waited this long to do a fart sound effect. He just lets out a rip-roaring fart. Now, at this point, Brad already has his fart fetish. He hasn't told anyone about it. He's just been secretly fantasizing about farts. Which, here's the thing, man. Could you imagine hanging out with someone like this? Like, Brad might be a nice guy. But imagine if you don't know that your best friend's into... Because if you did know that your best friend was a fart fetish, eproctophile, I imagine you would hold it in. I imagine you wouldn't want to do it in front of him. You just want to sit here and play Mario Kart or something. You go, oh, I know you're really turned on by farts. Sorry, I gotta pass some gas. He's like, go ahead, be my guest. You'd hold it in. You'd go to sleep. Your stomach's always hurt. It's bloated. You're like, ah. You're like buying Gas X by the box load. You're like, I really like the guy. I like hanging out with him. I just can't fart around him. Tony lets out this huge, rank fart. And Brad's like, ooh, that was amazing. Fortunately, he didn't fart in my face. But I can't believe that Tony would let out such a fart around me. So Brad decided to come up with this scheme. He said, hey, yo, Tony, guess what, dude? I bet you that I can beat you at Mario Kart. What? No way, you totally suck. You always pick Bowser. He's the slowest one. Yeah, Brad says. But I bet you I can beat you at Mario Kart. In fact, I say that this bet, whoever loses the bet, the winner gets to fart on the loser's face for, I don't know, a whole week. And Tony's like, oh, that's hilarious. Yeah, totally. Farts are funny. There's nothing creepy about them whatsoever. I will take that bet. Brad loses. Brad loses the bet. He's like, oh no. Oh me, oh my. Oh, the misery. I'm going to get farted on my face for a week. And Tony does. Tony starts farting on his face. I mean, he doesn't fart for a week straight. At the end of the 7 days, Tony's all emaciated. He's like, he farts so much he's dehydrated. But, like throughout the week, Tony would be sitting there and being like, yep, I got a big one coming. Come here. Put your face in my butt. This story's so insane. It's true, though. It's so insane. Tony's like, put your face in my butthole, son. I'm gonna fart right in your face. And Brad loves it. Now, here's the thing. Again, that's weird. Listen, man, I've done some crazy stuff in my life. That's not even close to that. It's not even close. But it gets even weirder because then we have this quote from Brad, okay? He said, quote, I continued to lose such bets once every few weeks for about 2 years, unquote. So, I mean, like, how else are you going to... This is such a specific fetish. How else are you going to make it work? I guess you could hire a prostitute, but again, he's still young. He's still in high school. 16, 17 years old. So for the next 2 years, whenever he was like, oh, I'm a little low on gas. I'm running out of energy here. I need someone to fart on my face. He would make a bet with someone, and he'd be like, hey, Jonesy, hey, I bet you anything that I'm going to flip this coin. You call heads. I get to fart in your face, but if it's tails, you fart in my face. And Jonesy's like, what? Jonesy just met this guy. He's like, hey, nice to meet you. I'm Brad. Hey, I'm Jonesy. Pulls a quarter out of his pocket. Flip the coin, And Brad will always lose these bets. And then for a period of time, this guy's like, haha, this is so funny. Farting in Brad's face. Now, here's the thing. At a certain point, I think his friends should have caught on. Like, yeah, that's funny once or twice, but after a year and a half, right? This went on for 2 years. After a year and a half, he's like, oh, I bet you anything. I can't eat this whole ear of a corn. And they're like, bro, let me guess, Brad. Let me guess, you're barely gonna nibble on it, and then I'm gonna be obligated to fart in your face. I don't want to fart in your face. Can't we bet something else? Money, maybe? For 2 years, every couple weeks. I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot of farting. He must have had a pretty big friend group. He kept tricking people into farting in his face by losing bets. But again, at a certain point, they should have figured it out. It's kind of on his friends. I would have, after the third time I won a bet, first off, I wouldn't get involved in this bet in the first place because I wouldn't want to lose. I was like, oh no, I lost. I'd be all cheating to win. I have a fetish of not getting farted on. They should have realized there's something goofy about this guy, right? I mean, as far as fetishes go, it's incredibly harmless. I rank it up there with the fetish of people who pop balloons. We covered them on a episode before. They're sexually excited by balloons popping. It's weird. It's kind of funny, right? I'm getting a good chuckle out of it as I'm talking to just one or two of you guys. The rest of them are like, nope. I'll wait till next week until a whole new bunch of episodes. But anyways, he does say this. He likes the, he really goes into detail. So, of course, I'm going to go into detail. He says it's about the smell. And it's about the smell of the farts and the sound of the farts. He prefers ones that are kind of a sulfury smell. And also a, quote, deep bubbling sound. I mean, here's the thing. If you're a fart purist, I'm sure that you can, quantify. I'm sure you have, different slang terms for different types of farts. You're like, oh, that's an old faithful because he farts every 15 minutes. He probably should go to the doctor. The guy's like, oh, my stomach hurts. You have different terms for him, right? Oh, I call that one the creek bed. It's wet. It's nice and wet. You get the right amount of sound. It sounds like fish splashing around in it. Oh, that one. I call that one the avalanche. That means it's not just a fart. Something else is coming. And I wish it wasn't aimed at my face, but here we are. He says that he prefers the person farting to be wearing clothes. He likes the sound of it through the fabric. I mean, at a certain point, you have to admire his commitment to the cause, right? Like, people who have, a boob fetish, they're like, yeah, I like big boobs. You know what I mean? That's it. That's the end of it. You're like, how big? They're just I don't know, too big? Maybe her back hurts? Maybe around there? I don't know. Or just, big boobs. They're never, super specific. They're never no, and it has to, if she's laying down, they have to be active sundials. You have to be able to tell what time it is. They have to be that big and pointy. But when it's so specialized, they have to fart on his face. He likes the deep bubbling sound, the sulfur smell through fabric. And he says particularly jeans or nylons. So again, he's been farted on enough at this point, which is something I don't think either of us could ever say. So bravo, Brad. You're living your dreams. He does say that he's bisexual when it comes to farts. He does prefer it when it's the super beautiful woman letting out the smelliest fart, the smelliest, noisiest fart. He kind of likes that. And he says in that case, it's almost like a power thing. Now we're getting to a little bit of dominatrix, which is another fetish, but it's, again, far more popular. So I was looking into this, obviously. I found this absolutely fascinating. Subcultures, I'm always amazed by subcultures. I don't know why I'm still shocked by fetishes. You think at this point, I've seen everything. I didn't know this existed. I did not know that people, I mean, when you say it, you're like, yeah, probably. There's probably someone who gets off on this, but More than just Brad, though. If it was just Brad, it would just be a crazy story. But there is a fart fetish community where they do fart fetish role playing, like online. You know, like people will be like, "Hey, look at me, I'm a sexy dude," and then the girl's like, "Ooh, look at me, I'm a sexy woman," and they'll type in, and then they're like, computer people are like having sex, clickety clack sexting, or is cyber sex. They also do that with farting. Which I imagine I don't know for sure. I imagine there's a soundboard involved in that one. Like normally when you're cyber sexing, do they even still use that term? Talking dirty to a girl online, you're just like, I taking your clothes off, clickety clack clack, and she's like, ooh, me, oh my, clickety clack. I don't know how you would do it. Like you just write in, I fart on your face. I imagine there's like a soundboard set up where they're like, I walk into your room and I go, hello, madame. And then they hit a button. It's all, it's like this distinct, deep bubbling through jeans sound effect. They have a fart fetish community. There's a fart fetish community online. I didn't see that. To be honest, I didn't look too hard for it. To be fair, I didn't look too hard for it. But I did find one website, I'll post it in the show notes, and they have a fart fetish podcast. Now, I was obviously like, I gotta check this out, right? People are we're in the same sphere. We are separate, we're each our own butt cheek, but we still exist in the podcasting world. I gotta check this out. And I was disappointed by the lack of fart sound effects. Like, Jason, they're not radio DJs. They're not shock jocks. But still, you think they would have like farting music or just farts randomly playing over the interview? Someone's talking and then you just hear a like this. It lasts like 3 minutes long just to keep the fantasy going. No fart sound effects, at least of what I heard. It's the Fart Fetish Podcast is the name of it. It's not super. I would have come up with a better name, like blowing gas or. Okay, that's the only one I can come up with. But anyways, I don't think about farts all the time. Deep bubbling podcast. I think they could have come up with a better name than just Fart Fetish Podcast. No fart noises as far as I could tell. It was just people talking about fart fetishes. But I did look through their episodes. They've been around for a while. They're still putting... Oh, and their community, like we are the Fluffle, the Dead Rabbit Radio community, we're the Fluffle. They are the Fart Fortress. Which I gotta be honest, man, I wish that was the name of our community. I saw that, I was like, oh man, it's already taken? I didn't even think of that. That's amazing. The Fart Fortress. They're called the Fart Fortress. Well, here's the titles of a couple different of their episodes, and then we'll move on to an actual paranormal story. But I love looking into these weird subcultures. Episode 21. Here's the thing, you should have to listen. I'm going to name off 4 episodes. You got to commit to listen to one of them. I'll do it too. I'll get back to you guys. Here's the name of 4 different episodes they have. Interview with the Furry Cuckold. There's nothing to do with farts in that one. I don't know why that guy's on. He got interviewed by the wrong podcast. They're like, it was nice talking to you, but can you fart? What is it? That's a good question, actually. What does a fart sound like in a furry suit? I imagine the smell is... I mean, it's trapped, right? Can't go anywhere. It's just stuck in there with you for the whole convention. Interview with a Furry Cuckold. That was episode 21. Episode 24 was interview... Interview with the farting wolf. Now, I'm going to assume that's another furry. Now, this guy's actually probably a furry who is actively farting. The first one was just like a furry cuckold. But interview with the farting wolf, I imagine it's a furry. Although I would be greatly entertained if they had somehow caged an actual wolf and trained it to fart. And people are like, I don't know, this kind of too weird even for us. That's an actual wolf farting. Interview with the Furry Cuckold. Interview with the farting wolf. Episode 26 is interview with Master Jaden and Master Ass Ripper. I can think of a million reasons why that is a bad nickname. I get it in in the context of this. It means that he's really good at farting. But that sounds like the most horrific serial killer name ever given. If you ever get captured by someone, by some sicko serial killer, and his name is Master Ass Ripper, I mean, listen, the best thing you can hope for is a quick death. I'd be like, oh no, I read about this guy in the news. Why? I don't know why they named him Master Ass Ripper. That's what they were calling him on the news, on the radio this morning, and now I'm captured by this guy. You better hope all he is into is farting. That's insane. Master Jaden, that's kind of a lame name if you're sitting next to Master Ass Ripper. And then episode 27, I think one of their most latest episodes, is Interview with the Wizard Fartbane. Here's the thing, I want to say, I don't know if he's an actual wizard, but I can't say for sure. With this group of people, I don't know. Maybe he can hypnotize people into farting particular noises. Maybe he's not a wizard. You're like, Jason, he's obviously not a wizard, you idiot. That's just the screen name he came up with. I don't know. I would be reluctant to hang out with anyone who claimed to be a wizard and was into farts, because you might find yourself in a sticky situation. But that is a look at the fart fortress, the fart fetish community. Absolutely insane stuff. And yeah, after the craziness of last week and the past month, I was like, I just want to start off the new week with a crazy, fun story. See, nothing was crazy. Nothing was super creepy in that story until Master Ass Ripper showed up. Then you're like, oh man, that's horrifying. I know. So maybe, I don't know, maybe you happen to know a guy. Maybe like when you were in college, some guy kept losing bets. And you're like, oh great, I don't even know why I'm betting with this guy as you're standing there. You're like, oh my back hurts. I keep leaning down in front of this guy. I keep farting on his face just because I won a coin toss. I don't know why I'm putting up with this. I bet, I did win the bet and this guy lost. So I'm going to fart in his face. And you're like, you're all sore. You can't sleep at night. You're like, and then like he wakes you up in the middle of the night. He's like, hey, I want to make a bet. I bet you anything. You're going to be mad that I woke you up in the middle of the night. Oops, I lost. I guess you get a fart in my face for the next month. You're all, Maybe you've run across this guy. I think I would have figured it out. I would just be like, no, you want me to fart in your face. And I'm not going to do it because it's gross. I don't know if I'd stop. I don't know if I'd stop hanging out with the guy. Maybe he is cool to hang out with. You're like, well, he is turned on by farts, but he's actually a pretty cool dude. So who knows? That's the story of Brad and the Fart Fortress. And I think a good, lively, funny way to start back the show. Because, man, I'm telling you, man, the last month and a half I was pretty depressed. So thanks for indulging me. Banked Sassy Pants, let's head off to a more dour story. A quite dark one, actually. Banked Sassy Pants. I'm going to go ahead and toss you the keys to the world-famous Carpenter Copter. Let's knock the dust off this thing. Everyone climb on board as Sassy Pants flies us out of the Fart Fortress all the way down to a house in the suburbs. We're all the way out of the suburban neighborhood, and we're here to visit one house in particular. This house is currently occupied by a young woman who we will call Carol. We don't have any real names. And her aunt. She's living there with her aunt. Clara is hiding a secret from her aunt. Clara has developed a pretty nasty cocaine addiction. And her aunt doesn't know this. Her aunt doesn't know that Clara is snorting cocaine, or I think if you smoke it, you're officially a crackhead. I've never used cocaine. There's a lot of drugs I haven't used. I haven't used crack or cocaine or heroin or anything like that. Trank. Never tried it. Not even curious. But I think it's mostly snorting, right? I don't know. I'm a child of the 80s. I just know what I've seen in movies. Whatever the fact, whatever the route of administration that Clara uses, she's developed a pretty bad cocaine habit, and she has been able to hide it from her aunt for quite a while at this point. Now, enter into the scenario Clara's boyfriend, a young man who we will call Mario. And Mario is the person who actually posted this story online. He said, "My girlfriend Clara, bad cocaine addiction, really getting out of hand. And I realized that something she needed to do to help stop this, because, big part of drug use is the enabling, plus keeping secrets, plus all sorts of other family details we aren't privy to in this story." Mario said he really tried to convince Clara that she needed to come clean with her aunt. Mario's like, "Clara, I know you love snorting cocaine. However you do it, however you inject it, can you inject cocaine? I don't know. Probably could have looked it up. I was too busy Googling the fart fortress. But, Clara, I love you, baby. You're my number one gal. But I feel like I'm being pushed out of the equation. I feel like we're having more of a threesome type of thing. It's not just me and you. It's me, you, and cocaine. So you need to stop doing all this cocaine. You stop doing it, not just the lesson. Just like, okay, sure, I'll cut back a little bit. I will no longer use it on Wednesdays. No. You need to stop doing cocaine altogether. And Clara doesn't want to do it. That's another thing with drug addiction, is that you can't really stop someone from being addicted to a drug unless they want to. And they're having this whole back and forth, and Mario's getting really stressed out about this whole thing, and he realizes he needs some backup. What he needs is for Clara, and really what she needs, is for Clara's aunt to understand what is going on and the severity of the problem and how much it is affecting Clara's health, both mentally, physically, and financially. So Mario is really pressing on Clara to admit her cocaine use to her aunt. Which is, that's really kind of a good way to go about it. Mario wasn't going to go around sneaking behind Clara's back and telling her aunt. Mario wanted Clara to say it. And he's really pushing her. He's really pushing her to come clean to her aunt, and she's super resistant to it. And this is going on, and this is quite a struggle. And for about a week leading up to the conclusion of this story, as we're getting closer to the end here, Mario said, my life was chaos at this point. He goes, I wasn't getting much sleep, and I wasn't eating a lot. He goes, well, I use cocaine as well, but not as much as she does. No, he never said that he used cocaine, but I think cocaine's known for keeping you up and keeping you skinny. He goes, I didn't sleep, and I didn't eat, and I was just having one hell of a time trying to convince Clara that she needed to come clean to her aunt about what was going on, until finally Clara relents and decides to let her aunt know that she is a cocaine addict. So the day comes where Mario is there and Clara opens up to her aunt and admits what's going on. Mario said it just basically didn't work out the way he thought it would or hoped that it would. It devolved into a huge screaming match between Clara and the aunt. They begin screaming at each other. It's this huge fight. He described it as, quote, horribly painful, unquote. Which makes me think that there might be a history of addiction in the family. The aunt saying things like, I always knew you'd end up like your mother. I can't believe you're going down this route. You know better. And then Claire saying, I can do whatever I want. You got $20 I can borrow? I'm not going to do coke. But I'm going to go out to a area where you can buy cocaine, but I won't come back with any. Or your $20. They get in this huge argument, and Mario's just sitting there, and he's like, what have I done? What have I done? But, he thinks, this could be a good step forward. Now that this is no longer being hidden from the aunt, now that Clara may be more accountable for her behavior at home, because, she lives with her aunt. Maybe she's up all night. There's a dance club. She's like, oh, why does Clara always have these parties over at the house that go on for days on end? Now the aunt can be aware of the signs of drug use. Something good might come out of this. Mario's thinking as the two women are screaming at each other at the top of their lungs. He's like, something good has to come out of this. And that is when he sees something. He sees that all of his attempts to help her out will be for naught. He sees something and he realizes he has lost this war. He's sitting there and he's watching these two women scream at each other. And he sees something standing behind Clara. And then he sees something standing behind the thing standing behind Clara. And then he sees something standing behind the thing that's standing behind the thing that's standing behind Clara. He sees a long line of shadow men standing behind his girlfriend. He said you could see they were lined up from tallest to smallest. Almost as if it was showing a great distance, a great single file army of shadow men standing behind Clara. He said they didn't say anything. They didn't do anything. But he knew why they were there. When Mario posted this online, he posted this on the X board, he said, quote, "I got the most distinct sensation that they were cruelly mocking me, saying, look what you've gone through. Look at your effort. And where has it gotten you?" It was so clear, it may as well have been said with actual words. Unquote. Mario, sitting there, sees this line of shadow men, and he realizes a couple things. One, no one else in the room can see them. The aunt didn't freak out and go, Clara, what's behind you?" Clara didn't turn around and see an endless army of shadow men, entities from another world lined up behind her. They didn't see these. Mario said he was the only one who saw them, and he didn't mention them to the two women either. He didn't mention it then during the fight, and he hasn't mentioned it since, what he saw. And what's interesting is Mario, I like the way that he said this. He said, quote, "I wasn't scared at all somehow. I wasn't scared at all somehow. It's like I knew all along this existed. And at that moment, I just felt completely defeated and ill." Unquote. There's a whole lot of things you can pull out of a story like this. We'll take the skeptical route. You're like, Jason, didn't this guy say he didn't sleep for a week beforehand? He did. And we do know there's a correlation between lack of sleep and seeing the shadow men. We've talked about shadow men a lot on this podcast. Shadow men were one of the first entities that I saw. Like, I always believed in ghosts growing up, but never really saw anything. Didn't have any paranormal, real, identifiable paranormal stories until I was 17. I had some weird stuff happen to me as a kid, and we've done episodes on that, but as far as this goes, the Shadow Men, it was, I did see the little blue boy ghost. I'll put all these episodes in the show notes, but around the same time I was seeing the Shadow Men, I might have seen the golden ghost before the Shadow Men. But anyway, the point is that they were, if not the first paranormal entity I saw, among the first. And this was way before the internet. I didn't even know what it was. I'd never heard of the term Shadow Man when I was seeing these things. There's the only way you could describe them. Sure, but I didn't know that other people were seeing such a thing. I didn't have lack of sleep when I would see them. They infested my grandmother's house. So, and I was living with her at the time. So you can see them from lack of sleep. You can see them if you do too much methamphetamines, which can also lead to a lack of sleep. But you can also see them if you are perfectly well rested. So a skeptic could say he was, he did not sleep for a week. He didn't eat for a week. He was so stressed out. But what's interesting, there's two things we can look at, or there's a bunch, but I'll keep it short. One is there has long been a connection, and people, it's interesting because sometimes when I talk about this stuff, people get a little upset. But there has long been a connection in the world of the paranormal between spirits, demons, entities that are not of this earth, and destructive vices, such as gambling addiction, pornography addiction, drug addiction, alcohol addiction. If you have a fart fetish, I was going to bring that back up. I don't think there's a fart demon standing behind you. There actually is a fart demon, though. I'll put that episode in the show notes. That's not a crippling... I mean, it might be if that's what you're into and you have a hard time finding a girl. You're like, Jason, quit bringing up the fart thing. Anyways, you know what I mean? Like, there are, people like sloth and gluttony and all that stuff. And I know those are like cardinal sins. If you sit around and you're just watching YouTube all day and you're not getting on with the project you really want to do, I don't necessarily think there's a demon involved in your procrastination. There could be. Right? If it's to the point where you just can't function and you're just completely emotionally shattered. And I'm not even saying every drug or alcohol addicted person, alcoholic is the term, every drug addict or alcoholic or gambling addicted person or pornography. I'm not saying all of those people have demons attached to them, but we do see a Venn diagram of demonic activity and destructive vices. I don't think it's all of them. There's a lot of gambling addicts out there who don't have a demon attached to them. People don't like it when I bring it up. Most of you guys don't care, but every so often I'll get an email when I talk about stuff like this. Because it feels like I'm removing the agency of the human and saying, oh, they're just doing it because the devil made them do it or something like that. In some of the cases, that might be true. I'd say in most it's not, but in some of the cases it might be true. It reminds me of that very famous photograph we've talked about before. I'll put it in the show notes. Of a man who was really lost in a world of addictions. And he was a horrible father and a horrible person, and he knew these things about him, but he couldn't let go of those vices. And someone took a photo of him. It's a very famous story. You guys probably heard about this before. Someone took a photo of him, and when the photo was developed, you can clearly see that there is no other way that you could go, oh, it's just a gas cloud. Someone farted and floated by him right in the back. The guy ran up and sniffed it. It's a dog's face. It's a dog's face looking over his shoulder. It's completely monstrous and demonic and evil. And the man saw that photo of himself and was like, what the hell's that? And it scared him so badly, he got clean. Because he felt that there were demons attached to him. That he shouldn't be this person. That he didn't need to be a wicked person. And by his own account, he was like, I was a horrible father. I was a horrible husband. He got clean. And that photo you see brought up a lot in this space. The other thing, so it's not unusual for someone who's in the throes of an addiction or some sort of destructive behavior to have a demon attached to him. I think most people aren't, but you get in that Venn diagram, some are. The other interesting thing I thought about this story, and we'll wrap it up like this, was Mario's reaction to it. Where he said, I wasn't scared. And in a way, I think I always knew that they were there. And knowing that just made him feel defeated. Because really, at this point, you realize you're not just dealing with a run-of-the-mill cocaine-addicted girlfriend. There is a darker force at play. So you're optimistic. I've dealt with people in my life, loved ones who have battled alcoholism and drug addiction and things like that. And it sucks. There's not much you can do for them. I know that my rule was, I used to kick it with my buddy Billy. And I said, I know you smoke meth. I know you sell meth. I know you do all sorts of meth-related activities. Just, don't do it around me. Don't do it around me. You're my boy. I love you. Don't do it around me. I don't want to hang out when you're geeked up. I don't want to be driving around when you're doing a deal with you, because we hung out a lot. I want to hang out with you because you're real cool. He's a family member, honestly, if I got to be completely honest, but he was a cool dude. He is a cool dude. He's just in prison now. Still a cool guy, though. Because I understood, and he understood, that I didn't support that part of his life, and I didn't want to have anything to do with it, but I loved him because he was my blood. And even if he wasn't, he was just a good guy. I hung out with this dude. But I knew that until he was ready to get help, isolating him or not hanging out with him wouldn't do him any favors. I wanted to be the one guy in his life that he could count on that wasn't using meth or selling meth or doing meth-related things. So, that's where I come at with it. I always love it when people are in recovery, and I understand people slip in and out of it, and I don't hate them when they do, or I don't hate drug addicts, and I can hate when they steal from me. But here we're talking about something completely different. Now we got a parasitic, demonic entity attached to someone you loved, who is also at the same time going through this horrendous cocaine addiction. So now you're fighting two battles. You're fighting a physical and mental, three battles. You're fighting a physical and a mental battle with just the drug itself, and then a spiritual battle with this otherworldly force. And the sense that, you would feel real defeated by that. You would be like, wow, I hope the rehab center's at a church. You get the double whammy going. But then also the idea where he goes, in a way I knew it was there all along. And it's funny because I think sometimes, though, we pick up on those things. We call them red flags. And that term has kind of been watered down through memes and TikTok and stuff like that. They're like, oh, he collects Warhammer figures, red flag. Red flags are generally those things that you can't really identify. Oh, he invests in crypto, red flag. Don't loan the guy any money. Sure, you can make fiduciary decisions based on that. You're like, what? Meme coins? Nah, I'm not gonna get involved in that. But my point is that we've all met people, I think, that we couldn't exactly say why. There's something you don't want to hang out with them, basically. There's some people you don't want to hang out with because they're kind of annoying. There are people you don't want to hang out with because they're violent, or maybe because they do meth. Again, it doesn't bug me. It bugs me. I'm not pro-meth, but you know what I mean? It's not like I'm going to stop hanging out with you. I don't want to help you repair a carburetor at 4 a.m, so please don't call me. It's that sense. I get it from time to time. I meet somebody and, I don't really think either anything about them, but then as more and more time goes on, maybe it's a coworker, maybe it's a friend of a friend, you just start to realize there's something wrong with that person. And no one else can see it. Everyone else seems to be acting like this person's totally normal, but there's something off about them. I'll get that feeling. I'll probably run into someone, honestly, maybe once every 5 years. It's not super common. And there are obviously people who you meet and they just rub you the wrong way, but you can go, that guy's a loudmouth. Or that guy keeps losing bets. I don't know why I keep making bets with him, but here we go. Because I'm at the Taco Bell drive-thru. I was like, a bet's a bet. I gotta earn, and this guy's gotta get farted on. There are people you don't hang out with for very specific reasons, and then there are people you don't like, and you can't really put your finger on it. And I think that was the situation with Mario. I bet that he really loved Clara. He loved her enough to try to help her out. If he didn't love her, he would have just bounced. He loved her enough to try to get her help. But I'm sure in the back of his mind, he could sense, outside of the cocaine use, there was something off about her. Because he was sensing this demonic presence in her life and, by extension, his life. He couldn't really put his finger on it. He loves her. She's great to hang out with. If there's ever a party to go to, she knows where it's at. But there's something about her that he couldn't say exactly what it was, but there's something about her in his head. And what he was picking up on was this demonic attachment to her. And it wasn't until he was beaten down, right? His plan had blown up in his face. He tried getting her help, and it made the situation worse. He's physically exhausted. He hasn't eaten. He's emotionally expended. And it's in that moment. So the skeptical answer is half right. He wouldn't have seen these things had he been fully rested and fully fed and had a huge emotional well to draw from. It was when he was already at the edge of the chasm, mentally and physically, is when he could see this army of shadow men standing behind her. He had to get beaten down. His senses had to be just battered so much that he could perceive the darkness that was there all along. It's a crazy story. It's a crazy story. It's quite short, right? It's just a couple paragraphs, but it makes us really think so much about the paranormal and the darker sides of it. There's one thing about a ghost in your closet being spooky or not wanting to go downstairs late at night because you think the little girl is hiding behind the rocking chair. But there's another thing where it's actively interfering in your mental health or someone else's mental health. I mean, you're not going to have great sleep after the little girl goes, boo, jumps up and scare you. But it's also not, that ghost girl isn't making you spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars a week or earning your coke and, you're sleeping with drug dealers or whatever the situation is, however you get it. I'd much rather take a little ghost girl. I'm going to be careful I say this. I don't want to invoke something, but you would much rather have a little ghost girl hiding in your living room late at night, and every so often you hear her go, ring around the roses. You would much rather have that than have a demon attached to you that feeds off of you, and the next thing you know, you're 20 grand in a gambling addiction, or you're doing unscrupulous things to drug dealers. Not me, you, but you're doing unscrupulous things to drug dealers to get your fix. And you're going to have to do the same thing in a couple hours to stave off withdrawals. It's far darker when you see them actually feeding off of humans. But while it's rare when we look at the grand scope of the world of the paranormal, it's quite rare. It's not never. Like, it does happen enough that we can put together these conclusions and look at all this evidence. And that's really where I'm going to leave us today, because tomorrow we're going to revisit an old foe of this very podcast. We've talked a lot about the entities known as solar plexus clown gliders, these interdimensional snake-like entities that coil around our souls and slowly but surely destroy our lives. We've covered them a few times on this podcast. They are originally on the conspiracy theory iceberg. You think, oh, this is just one weird story, and then we found another one. Oh, that's just another weird story. Well, I got another one. Another story of a human interacting with one of these solar plexus clown gliders, and it will send shivers down your spine. Not just because the snake-like entity is slowly compressing it. No, that too. But also because you will learn how easily you or I or anyone can be attacked by one of these interdimensional demonic creatures. You don't already have to be a drug addict. You don't already have to be some gooner addicted to pornography. You could just be minding your own business, walking down the street. And the next thing you know, you're in the clutches of a dark, demonic entity that wants nothing more than to feed off of your misery. We'll talk about that tomorrow on Dead Rabbit Radio. deadrabbitradio@gmail.com is going to be our email address. You can also hit us up at facebook.com/deadrabbitradio. TikTok is @deadrabbitradio. Dead Rabbit Radio is the daily paranormal, conspiracy, and true crime podcast. You don't have to listen to it every day, but I'm glad you listened to it today. I'm glad to be back. Thanks, guys, for sticking